Welcome back to an adventure that will take us beyond the confines of the Dark Souls Iceberg. During this video, we will be correcting mistakes that I made in my Dark Souls Iceberg video, as well as going through new theories that missed the making of the iceberg. If you haven't watched the original Dark Souls Iceberg video, the link will be in the description as well as a card appearing on the screen, but you won't have necessarily needed to have seen the video for all the new theories that are coming up, which I've segmented the video you should be able to skip straight to. Now, let's start correcting the multitude of mistakes I made, and I made a lot, so we'll only be covering the most obvious ones. Unfortunately, I butchered the pronunciation Hidetaka Miyazaki, which honestly is a massive mistake and I can only apologise for that. I definitely won't be making that mistake in the future, and I'll be triple checking all pronunciations. But staying on pronunciations, apparently I was also saying Asperg instead of Iceberg. I think I'll blame that one on my Australian accent. One of the bosses in the game, Calamite, is usually killed with Hawkeye Goff's help. I mentioned that potentially the killing of Calamite without asking for Goff's help may actually have not been expected by the developers, as when Calamite is defeated, no victory achieved message is displayed. Matt Sins, along with others, point out that this actually is not the case, as if you defeat Calamite and return to Goff, he has some unique dialogue if you return to him.
And I see that the great black dragon Calamite is dusted by thine hand.
So the developers definitely intended for players to think outside of the box in so many areas, which is one of the reasons why this game is so great. The Iceberg included an entry about item burdening, in which I stated that this would be hard to prove that it still existed in the remastered version of Dark Souls due to the quantity storage glitch not being reproducible. I tried doing the original quantity storage glitch in Dark Souls Remastered, in which you have to roll and switch dialogues at a certain time, and I couldn't reproduce it. However, I was able to duplicate souls quite easily, and I can confirm that item burdening definitely is in the game. The souls duplication glitch I used for the remastered version is a form of quantity glitch, where we abuse the specific quantity dialogue. But to do this yourself, you'd require an already large stack of items. I would suggest just purchasing 999 arrows, which is quite cheap, and you also require to have both a controller and a mouse as input for Dark Souls. Firstly, you would open your inventory and attempt to drop the item of large amount. And then you can just cancel this request, as you just need this quantity dialogue to appear. Next, we go over to the system menu and have our mouse hovering over the inventory icon while our controller's input is hovering over the quit button. We then have to time our inputs, so when we click on inventory, a few frames later we can confirm on our controller. If you time this correctly, you should be back on the inventory page with an exit prompt of the game in front. If you didn't get this timed correctly, don't worry. You can repeat the process of the timing without having to redo the arrow drop dialogue. So once we've gotten to this correct screen and dialogue, we can navigate the inventory with our mouse and go down to the soul, clicking to bring up its own dialogue, but it will be hard to see as it will appear behind our quits dialogue. So we just need to navigate our mouse to the top part of this dialogue and some text should appear to use the item, and then we'll click that. It will then ask us for the quantity of what we want to use, and we'll be able to actually set it to 999, without even having that many. Just a note, this will consume all of your stack of souls, so if you have 3 or 5, you may want to drop the rest of them and use them one by one to get the maximum number of souls that you can get. I use this soul duplication method to obtain enough souls, to obtain enough giant shields to burden myself. A final mistake we'll cover from the last Dark Souls video were the boulder levers in Sen's Fortress. I still left it quite open as to what could have caused them to move, but a lot of comments mention that the levers in fact do move on their own. With one commenter, my name is Asylum 394, showing that 2 Italian streamers, Sparku and Sidonia, used their multiple perspectives and discovered that in fact the levers moved based upon where the player is positioned in the fortress. If a player is moving back and forwards, the lever will actually move on its own, having been triggered by the player moving around the fortress. I believe that this is in place in order to make the fortress a lot more difficult, with the boulders seemingly chasing you around the fortress. Now it's time for us to exercise our brains as we talk about some more theories. When discussing these theories, I'll be displaying a health bar on the top left of the screen. A full health bar will mean that I think this theory is close to 100% true, whereas an empty health bar will mean that I don't think that this theory is that plausible at all. In the original Iceberg, we covered the theory that Karth and Frampt, two primordial serpents, are either the same being, or they have the same goal which they cloud with deceit. This was originally intended to be more of a focus point in the story, rather than something that is often quite easy to miss. At the start of the Dark Souls playthrough, someone dumps a body that contains a cell key into the cell that you are in, allowing you to escape. This is Oscar of Asura, and in the game he can be found later, dying further on in the Undead Asylum. Quite a short character arc, isn't it? Oscar was actually slated to have a far more pivotal role in Dark Souls, but a lot of his interaction and dialogue was cut. The Oscar cut dialogue was actually an original entry on the Iceberg that I didn't cover, so now's the best time to go into it. This was brought up and detailed in the YouTube comments by C. Lamau, so credit goes to them. Oscar was meant to be an NPC who you would grow attached to and become your friend throughout the Dark Souls storyline, even helping you fight the fierce band of thieves in the Darkroot Garden. But ultimately, Oscar would become an antagonist near the conclusion of the game, with Oscar confronting you with a primordial serpent that you yourself did not end up choosing. No matter which choice you make, Oscar would rise as your opposition. But why would Oscar be opposing the foundational decisions that you made through your Dark Souls playthrough? Perhaps Oscar was meant to be a chosen undead in their own right, with fate causing the ominous and inevitable feud between the two of you. This was potentially orchestrated by Frampt and Karth to find out of the two of you, who had the strongest will and conviction to defeat their closest friend and claim the title of the true chosen undead. Why does no one ever talk about how Pinwheel's boss arena is a coffin? Pinwheel's chamber contains many books and experiments, which we theorised on in the original video. However, we didn't actually touch on the fact that Pinwheel's chamber is in fact a giant coffin. This makes sense as it's the entrance to the Tomb of the Giants, so perhaps this was originally a tomb for some sort of giant and later inhabited by Pinwheel. But what really could have been the giant that was buried there? Bosses like Ceaseless Discharge are terrifyingly large, but this was most likely due to his transformation by the Flame of Chaos. There are other large coffins that we can see in the Dark Souls universe, with Dark Souls 3's first boss, Udik Skundir, appearing in a courtyard in the Cemetery of Ash, alongside a partially buried giant coffin. There is a theory that this is actually the tomb of Yhorm the Giant, and that the tomb has somehow made its way to the Cemetery of Ash. This would make sense, with the giant being in the giant coffin in the Tomb of the Giants. But I don't really buy this theory due to the massive location difference of the coffins, as well as Dark Souls 3 taking place after the first Dark Souls, which means that Yhorm should still have been in the coffin during Dark Souls 1, or was not the original owner. Another large object found within Lordran is a giant skull that we can find in Ash Lake, with no real evidence stating as to where the skull would have originated from. Near the end of the Tomb of Giants is an open expanse which displays the beauty of the Ash Lake. YouTuber Illusory Wall suggests that perhaps a giant skull from the Tomb of the Giants tumbled all the way down into Ash Lake and ended up washing onto the Ash Lake shore, resulting in the historically unclear giant skull that we can see in the game at present. All the way at the bottom is the reason they call him Big Hat Logan. Now I know that this is mainly a joke comment, because Logan is called Big Hat Logan because of his massively obstructive hat. But did you know why he could be called Logan? The average sized Hat Logan researched this, and discovered that Logan originates from Scottish Gaelic, and it translates to the meaning of Little Hollow. So Big Hat Logan actually means Big Hat, Little Hollow. But I guess at the end of the game, he ends up being Big Hat, Very Hollow. Mimics are from Oolacile. What are mimics? How are they made? Why are they always in the shape of a chest? The mimics are one of the most frustrating enemies, with the allure of loot often quickly reversed into yet another frustrating death. a gangly creature with arms and legs and a tongue protruding from an actual chest. The mimic will feast on you if you fall for their trap of trying to take their treasure. But why are they like this? Chameleon is a sorcery that will transform a player into an object, be it a pot, a pillar, a barrel, or a chest. As the description details, this ancient sorcery originated from the land of Oolacile. It's theorised that there are a rogue group of sorcerers in Oolacile who would use chameleon to disguise themselves as chests, wait for others to put their valuables in their chest, and then steal the loot. Mimics have a rare chance of dropping the symbol of avarice, which is the symbol of shame imposed as a long-lost clan, exiled for the sin of avarice. Potentially, this group of thieves were discovered by the rest of Oolacile and were exiled, with the sin of avarice being the sin of desire, the desire to obtain all of Oolacile's riches. Bloatheads were the former citizens of Oolacile and were corrupted by the Father of Abyss Manus to become the disturbed individuals in the present. They look to have quite a similar appearance to the mimics, so maybe the exiled group of the Oolacile were also corrupted to become the memis that are now known as the mimics. Additionally, if we see a bloathead come into contact with a mimic, the bloathead will laugh maniacally at the mimic, perhaps taunting the existence of its now exiled counterpart. Tarkus went into the painted world. There are many theories as to how Tarkus died, with his body appearing next to the painted world of Aramis. One of these theories, anonymously created on the Dark Souls wiki and resurrected by Justin Priest, speculates that Tarkus, along with his knight, were chased into the painting that led into the painted world of Aramis. I think I've managed to track down the origin of this rumour to GameFAQs user 59, so credit to them as well. A lone knight can be found guarding the way to Priscilla. This knight wields a greatsword, which is also what Tarkus uses, as noted by the description, a favourite of the Knights Berenike, known for their heavy armour and black iron Tarkus. This implies that this knight could have been in a similar league to Tarkus and could even have become part of his platoon. Tarkus could have potentially ordered one of his own men to guard the entrance, while he himself examined the hostility of Priscilla. There are also hollows that we can find throughout the painted world, with them being stronger than the hollows that we can find in other places such as the Undead Berg. They could be stronger because they were actually members of Tarkus' party, and we could assume that they were very strong people. Ultimately, it's then speculated that Tarkus, unlike his brethren, successfully made his way through the painted world, and upon returning to Analondo, was ambushed by a mob of painting guardians, with his body then being dumped beside the painting. Kitsune Hero actually speculates that Tarkus was fatally wounded by Priscilla as he was unable to see her due to her invisibility. He then dragged himself over to the edge of the painting and later died of blood loss. It is said that if you glitch past the bridge in the painted world, you could see the knight staring at the fog gate. Maybe they witnessed the fall of the almighty and great Tarkus, causing them to lose belief and also hollow. There is one issue in this theory though. For a player to enter Analondo, we need to be in possession of the peculiar doll, which the Tarkus gang would not have had in their possession. But perhaps the doll isn't actually the key to entering the painted world, but rather the doll is just a representation of what is needed to enter Aramis. Someone may actually be able to enter the painted world if they have something that Priscilla wants. And in the player's case, this could be the peculiar doll. Maybe it was something else for Tarkus. Or perhaps the doll was entirely a game mechanic and was actually in no way relevant to the lore. Let's keep with the painted world of Aramis theory and talk about another favourite theory of mine, that the painted world of Aramis is actually the second half of the Undead Asylum. The painted world is introduced to us through a random bridge leading towards a strange land. The other side of the wooden bridge is broken off, with there being no way to actually determine what this bridge could lead to. Herald of Zena suggests that perhaps this bridge was originally meant to lead to the Undead Asylum, but was destroyed or cut and placed within the painted world. This is quite similar to Undead Asylum, where there is an abrupt cut-off of land where the crow's nest resides. Miyazaki did state that the painted world of Aramis was a place where a lot of unfinished content was placed. But perhaps the entire world of Aramis was actually cut. This can be theorised as there are many parallels that we can see between the Undead Asylum and the painted world. Both primarily use hollows as their enemies, with torch hollows being prominent in both worlds. But we could relate this back to our previous theory of Tarkus and his knights having been in Aramis. Both worlds are also in a state of disrepair and are riddled with themes of punishments, with sacks being placed over the heads of individuals, cages being found in both areas, and the wheel skeletons perhaps representing the torturing technique of tying an individual to a wheel. Both areas also heavily features crows, with crow-like imagery appearing throughout the world, and Velka also loosely being connected with the crows. These worlds even have a similar cloudy textured sky, but I think this is probably our imaginations getting a little too ambitious. Asylums in the medieval ages were often coupled with the presence of a church. An example of this was London's most notorious insane asylum, Bethlehem Hospital, also known as Bedlam. Originating in the 13th century, Bedlam had approximately 12 cells for patients, a kitchen, accommodation staff, and an exercise yard. These were all surrounded by a courtyard with a chapel located in the middle of the courtyard. The Undead Asylum actually has no presence of a church, but we can find one in the painted world of Aramis. One connection could be a coincidence, but when we reach this many, we should question whether there is actually more than meets the eye. And perhaps this theory could hold true. But I feel if these worlds were ever connected, they would have been removed far earlier in the development cycle, so there was a lot of time allowing a larger disconnect to happen between these two worlds. So that concludes our extension to the Dark Souls Iceberg. Thanks for joining me on this journey. In time, I hope to venture into Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3, and other games as well. But there are still so many unanswered questions around Dark Souls. If I release more Dark Souls videos though, I'll try releasing them as standalone theory videos and delving much deeper into those theories, so let me know if you like them when they're released. Also, you'll find that a couple of these theories I went through were actually based upon comments or questions within my videos. So if you do have any questions or theories, put them in the comments now, and maybe I'll end up covering them. Also, keep picking up on my many inevitable mistakes that I'll make. I'll try and become better and better. Until next time, I'll see you later.